Welcome to the Intentional Guy Podcast, where we are driven to help men become more intentional and purposeful in their daily lives. Your host, Michael Chestnut, will interview amazing guests to get insight and glean wisdom from, so we can integrate intentional living and lead happier, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. All right, let's get started with the show.
Welcome to Intentional Guy. I'm so glad you joined us again here today. You know, we've heard about the 5 love languages. I'm sure you have, and a lot of us we've read that book, and we've done a lot of things to apply it. I like when we can take things that we know, but look at it in a different way, from a different perspective. And today on my show, I'm bringing to you author Paul Zollman today with us, who brings a different perspective. The Role of Love is his book that's out, and some more information on it. But Paul, first off, thank you for being on the show today. I deeply appreciate you being here and sharing your work with us today.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here.
What I like to do is let's just jump into it. Let's start off with your story, how this has come about, and just tell us a little bit about the role of love and about your perspective on the 5 love languages and the concept you've come up with.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. My story actually starts with my grandfather, who actually lived in Indiana in the United States, and he had 9 children. After the 9th children was born, I don't know what happened, but his wife passed away, possibly because of the childbirth or just other circumstances. But she passed away. This grandfather was so distraught that he sold the farm, he sold all the equipment, and at an auction. And when people came to the auction, he would also ask them, "Would you like this kid? Would you like this kid?" And he gave all the kids away except one. A horrible abandonment, just think of all the emotional trauma. Those children had just lost their mother. Now they're losing their father. What horrible thing that could have been for that whole generation and many generations to come. This grandfather then took that one child named Benjamin to Montana, found another wife, and with that wife had 10 children, the 6th of which is my father. When my father was 10 years old, this grandfather passed away. So now he's got 19 children all over the United States with no father, no mother. And it's just kind of really a sad situation. So in that sadness, and in when people are miserable, we have a tendency to want to share that misery. And I think that that's a kind of a sad scenario, but it's just something that happens and my father was no different. I grew up and he was very strict. He was he was a truck driver. He was gone during the week, and then he'd come home on the weekends. One thing I really admire about him is that he dated my mother purposely, intentionally, every Friday night. What a great man he was to purposely, and he never missed. As far as I remember, he never missed Friday night with my mother. But the venue was always the same. And I imagine the situation was very similar in every circumstance too. The venue was a Maverick bar, and they would sit drinking, and that was their date. And so not a great date by today's standards, but it was a date. And in that date, my mother would tell how the week went and how the children behaved. And if we behaved badly, it was a bad situation. In fact, it was so bad that one time I remember getting spanked and having bruises on my rear for more than 3 weeks. It was just that bad of a situation. Sometimes it'd be a belt, but it was just a horrible situation. So it was emotional. There was a lot of other types of abuse I don't want to get into, but I grew up with that. And it wasn't until about age 35 that I started realizing that, wait a minute, I can't blame all my relationship problems on my father or on my upbringing. I started feeling responsible for my own actions. And I thought, and it just was like a light bulb turned on for me, Michael. And it was at that moment that it happened. And my father had been dead 7 years already. So even after my father had passed away, I found myself still blaming him for problems that I was having in my own personal life. It was easy to blame someone. When you blame someone, you don't have to take any responsibility.
Yep.
Passing the blame. To me, it's what I call a false atonement. You don't have to change, and there's no need for a change if you can blame someone about your own or anything. So I stopped doing that, started taking responsibility at age 35. I became a little bit better father, but the damage in my own family had already been done. After 23 and a half years of being married to my first wife, we parted ways, and I found myself single. During this time, I was in a midlife crisis and thought I'd have some fun. Might as well have some fun. So every other weekend I had the children. On those weekends that I had off, did not have the children, I did what I called destination dating. Destination dating is just that I live in one city, she lives in another city. We agree on the city that we're going to meet in. We have a date. That's it. Mm. So I at the time was living in Charleston, South Carolina. I went to Daytona Beach, Jacksonville, Florida, Atlanta, Columbia, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, New York City, Nashville, Kansas City, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Snowflake, Arizona, Cabo San Lucas. All those places I went for dates. It was a great time. I loved it, except I was not finding love. Mm. So growing up in anger, growing up, first learning those things that are not right to do, you kind of gravitate and want to figure out, well, what is the right thing to do? And the other day I found in my walking around my house, I found a stick. And on one side of the stick, it's really nice and smooth.
Right.
Other side of the stick, you see these pokey things, the knots. So I call this my naughty and nice stick. I'm sure Santa Claus has a stick just like it, a naughty and nice stick. Yeah. So what I thought was that, where am I at on that stick? I had another incident I want to talk about, and then we'll come back to the stick. Is that I was dating at this time, and I was living in Phoenix, Arizona. My sister thought I was lonely. She lives 7 hours away. She says, I have a neighbor that I want to introduce you. Well, I got really tired of that destination dating and spent over $10,000 doing destination dating. I did not want to do destination dating again. Yeah, the distance and everything just wasn't working out for any relationships long term. So I said, nah, but she's big sister. She says, oh, come on. And so I said, oh, okay, I'll write her, I'll text her, I'll do whatever. So I started corresponding, and we actually developed a very nice relationship. So after about 4 or 5 months, we were close enough that I felt like, I'm going to take this girl to my big brother, 300 miles north of where I live, to find out what he thinks. When I went in to my brother's house, is that my sister-in-law pulled this woman aside and said, the only emotion that the Zollman family learned growing up is anger. At first I denied it. Then it made me mad. I thought, I guess she's right. And I thought, this is a moment that either I can change that perception or do nothing about it. And I decided I wanted to change that perception. So I started reading all these books. I read the Color Code, and then I started reading the 5 love languages. And I really liked the principles of the 5 love languages, but I didn't get it. You mean I'm supposed to guess, Michael, what love language you are, and then cater to that, and then we're going to be buddies? And you're going to call that love? You know what? I grew up in anger. That wasn't love. But neither does that sound like love to me, to cater to you and to do just things because I know that's what you like. I mean,
Right.
it's almost manipulative in a sense. So the second thing that Dr. Chapman has in his book, The 5 Love Languages, is that, well, if you take this survey, you can find out what love language you are, what your primary love language is. Then what? What do? Advertise? Hello, Michael, I'm gifts. What do you have for me today? I mean, it's awkward at the very least. No, neither one of those worked for me. And maybe it's just me. I know it's worked for millions of people around the world, but just me, it did not work. I'm single too. So his book said, do it to your significant other. I didn't have a significant other. How was I supposed to practice that? So I had a thought. I felt inspired. I had a thought, what if I made this in the game? As a child, I really liked games. And I contacted Dr. Chapman. I said, are you licensing those icons so that I could do a different presentation of that or a different application of it? And they wrote back and they said, no, they're not doing that. So I went to a intellectual property attorney in my town and found out that theory is not copyrightable. Application. So I thought, well, I'll just make my own icons and then I'll make my own application. So that's what I did. I produced it into a die. The die looks like this. Just has the love languages on it. There you see gifts, touch. There's service. Those are the words. And there's time.
Mm-hmm.
So easily identifiable what the love language is. There's 5 love languages, 6 sides on the dice. This one is surprise me. So there's just 2 instructions. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice all day that day. The next day you roll it, it might be different. So what happens, Michael, is that over a 30-day period, you actually learn all 5 love languages to give it away. And this is really significant because I started to see that I can't control or bid anybody to love me. I have absolutely zero control over anybody sending love my way. But what I do have control over is sending it out and responding if it comes my way. Those are the only 2 things I have control over. So I'm trying to stay in my lane, trying to do that. As I'm sending it out, what I'm finding is I'm learning all 5 love languages. After reading the book 4 or 5 times, I couldn't spit them out. I couldn't tell you what the 5 love languages are. But as you practice it, it becomes part of you. And that's why I call it the role of love, R-O-L-E, of love. It's inside you. You R-O-L-L, the die outside of you. But the role of love is inside you. It changes you. You learn how to give all those 5 love languages away over a 30-day period. You become what I like to call a love language linguist. Somebody that knows all the love languages to give it away. The best part about that is that it improves your vision. I see you have glasses on there. That improves your vision. This does too, that you can see it when it comes your way and then respond appropriately. It may not be your primary love language that is given to you, but you can say, oh, it's over here. I see that as love. They're loving on me. And then you can respond appropriately.
Well, I like that because I'm a process guy first off. So I love having things that are practical, but also help me to develop. Because you said a couple things that are dead on. It's so easy to blame someone and not take responsibility, right? And then we just travel down the path we inherited. We don't have to do that. We have choices we get to make, but I can't control somebody else's choices, but I can control mine. Absolutely. And so, coming up, how do I do that then? And it's through practical principles and practical things, such as what you did here, because one of the things that you did, you took the love language, but instead of And I get what you're saying. I think the love languages are great to understand, like with my wife, understand her love languages and all that. But I also is so important to understand all the love languages and how to apply it out to people, to others. One, I love it because it takes it outside of myself. So it's not selfish. I'm not being selfish with it.
It's no longer about you, Michael. I'm so sorry about that. It's not
Yep.
about you. It's about them. It's
Yep.
about lighting them up. And that's one of the things about rolling the die and practicing a love language. You're watching for opportunities all day long to give that love language away, to express love in that way. Then this, instead of saying, here's a survey, Michael, would you take the survey so I know how to love you?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having that awkward moment, what you're doing is you're sending love out. And when they light up, that's what they like. Just you take a mental note. And so that's how you discover what they like, what their primary love language or one of their primary love languages might be. They light up. So we're here to be a light to the world. This is a way to do that.
Exactly. And also you take a survey. Some people, when they take a survey, it doesn't always come out the way because sometimes they're putting down what they think they should put down instead of how they really do respond. And so, like you said, it's an easy gauge because how they respond, when they respond positive to a certain love language, then you're like, I found the key here, and which is great because, some people don't even know what their love language is, or they got it mixed up because I was a preacher's kid. We grew up, being a chameleon, being what everybody needed us to be, that I didn't even know who I was or what I liked, and let alone be able to tell you. But I love the fact that now in my life, there's so many people in our life too. Like, it's not just my wife. Mm-hmm. I got my coworkers that I deal with every day. I've got my community, people in my community that I'm dealing with every day. And one of the things that I love this, I love where she said, we're an angry family and we can choose what to do with it. I worked in a prison. And if you can only imagine, that is such a negative environment.
Absolutely.
And I did not realize how negative that had made me become. And then one day I'm like, I get to choose where I work. I get to choose what I do. And I had to intentionally make some choices to change that. And it's amazing how it affected my life by doing those positive changes. And like you said, we can change. There are things in us that we can change, but it takes practice. It takes a choice to do it. And to me, one of the things that's really important to a character of mine is how I relate to other people. I didn't want to be that angry Mike or that negative person that I had become. Everything was negative. And so I had to start working on how I treated other people.
Absolutely. I think the die really helps that too, Michael. And it's a really, really good point that you bring up, that as you roll the die, you're watching for what's right about that person. What can I love about that person? And there's so many people that you come in contact with all day long that you are so busy, just focus on those two things. You don't have time to say, what's wrong with that person? And go down that critical path. Heaven knows that the world does not need another critic. Yep. We don't need more people that are criticizing one another. We need people that will actually focus and on those things that are good about people. I like to compare it to a magnifying glass. You can see how that magnifies my eye or whatever. You can see that if you use a magnifying glass, it's going to make it bigger. If you focus on what's wrong with people, guess what's going to grow bigger?
Yeah.
the wrong things in them is going to grow bigger. Is that what you really want? So let's be mindful of that and be accountable in that. What are we going to focus on? So if we focus on the good things that people, even children, focus on the good things that children do, focus on the good thing that the employees do, focus on the good thing that anybody does, that's going to grow larger. Who hasn't seen a child just swell up with excitement when they've been given a compliment or when they've done something and there's approval from people that are older? They absolutely love that.
Well, I'm looking at your website here, and you're on the roleoflove.com, role of love, ROLE of love.com. And we'll make sure that we put that in the description for people. But I see, so you actually have the dice available for people to buy, and the Role of Love journal with die. But I also like you have a role of the most effective ways to demonstrate love every day. Explain that a little bit to us. Yes.
So there's actually a book, and then there's a journal. So there's two items out there. So the journal, let's talk a little bit about that. I want to explain it in a way that consider the die in the school circumstance. At the beginning of the day, the kids roll the die. That's the love language they're expected to practice all day long. At the end of the day, it comes and then the teacher gives them the last 15 minutes of the day. They've got to record what they rolled, opportunities they saw to love in that way that day, then what they did about those opportunities. Think of that from an accountability standpoint. This is intentional. This is something they started the day with, something they're memorizing the picture that's on the die. They're memorizing whatever they rolled that day, and they're intentionally looking for opportunities all day long. How's that going to tamp down any misbehaving or any violence? Obviously, if they're really looking to do that, they're not going to be misbehaving. They're going to be watching for opportunities to love, to do good things to other students. They're never going to go to the bullying route. They're going to be so busy doing that because they know they have to report at the end of the day what they did for the day. And I wouldn't say the teacher, I wouldn't suggest that the teacher grade that, because just give them a pass fail. At the end of the school year, guess what you've got? That first grader has a journal of how they loved in first grade, what they loved and how they expressed that love in first grade. That second grader, same thing, and on and on. It is a journal. Who wouldn't have loved to have a journal like that to show their kids or show their grandchildren? I would have loved to have a journal, a love journal like that from my mother or my grandmother. Instead, I got the weather. Who cares about what the weather was 50 years ago?
Right.
Seriously. Or the food that they ate. My mother went to the neighbor's house, ate dinner. It was good. Yeah. Okay. I want to know how you felt. I want to know what you loved about, what you loved about your life, what you did about those feelings of love.
Well, what I like too is starting your kids to teach this, because there's a saying I once heard, Noah, but it's easier to build boys and girls and repair men and women, and what a great way to teach them how to love others and how to practice it and understand it, because then it builds into who they are. It becomes part of their DNA. And let's be honest, as it's easier as we're younger to learn these principles than to apply them when we're old men like me and you, trying to change those things. Although it's not impossible, is it? No. We can do it. It's all a choice, and to choose to make better choices towards it. But I would say, if you're someone who finds yourself negative, how do I find a way to change that? And I know a lot of people don't like the journal part, but what I like about it is it's not really a journal as much as it is documenting how you took these practical principles and applied them today. How did it work for you today? And I love it for this simple reason, because it's something you can go back later on and you can see the progress in which you've made and are doing. And it gives you an opportunity to stretch yourself a little bit.
Absolutely. And I really like that, Michael, that you're perceiving that. That's exactly what happens. And I was surprised myself. I thought, you know what, I've tried a lot of things because I wanted to overcome that anger. I wanted to be responsible. I wanted to break the chains of my heritage in that way. You can't break the blood heritage, but you can break the chains of the bad habits, the bad traditions of your fathers. And so that's what I wanted to break away from, and to start a new life, and to be able to project that to my children and grandchildren in that way. And by doing that, I was very surprised how quickly it happened. I was very surprised how quickly the focus became absolute focus on what's right about people, what there's to love about people, and that kept me so busy, I forgot about what was wrong. And the flashes of anger that I would have that used to define, when is Dad going to blow up next time? When is that going to just that percolate? When's that teapot going to start whistling? And it's just, rather than be defined by that, that's there. I don't do that anymore. It just this replacement behavior of intentionally loving all day, every day, to everyone. Dr. Chapman recommends that you do it to your significant others. This is totally different than that. This is to everyone. I thought that when I read the book several times, I thought, what? I don't have any significant others right now. How can I even do it? I can't even do it part-time. I had my family, obviously, but I was living in California,
Right.
in an area. I didn't have anybody significant others at the time to be able to practice this on. So I was forced, being single, to do it to everyone. It was a blessing in disguise. It really was a godsend to be able to do it that way. It became, instead of a part-time job, which would be to significant others, because you're not around them all that time, it became full-time to everybody.
Yeah.
And being full-time, it creates a whole new mindset. You're able to institute that mindset that I can love appropriately to everybody. I have a funny story about teaching children how to do this. I had a family that I tested this with, and there are 5 children in the family. The youngest is a boy. He's 4 years old. He rolls the die, and on the day he rolled the die, he rolled physical touch. And he jumps up and down and fist pumps and says, "Yes, physical touch." And immediately starts beating up on his brothers. And the mother, exactly. The mother had to suppress the laughter and say, "Jonathan, let's back up just a little bit. This is appropriate physical touch." So what it created for Jonathan and the mother is that this is a teaching moment. This is a moment that you can learn exactly what appropriate physical touch would be. And just like that in a classroom, and I'm sure that it would come up in a classroom too, the teacher would be the facilitator that way, to teach what is appropriate love in each one of those categories.
Yep. And let's be honest, all of our behavior is learned behavior. It's learned behavior. And what you're teaching in this is by replacing it, is by learning new habits, new behaviors, and applying them. And once you apply them, they become a part of you. But also what I love about your story is sometimes people don't know, if they haven't seen it illustrated to them, they don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so, just like this young kid, he didn't it was taught to him. It gives us an opportunity to teach, because we would never have thought, we would never put that together, that was going to be the reaction, right? We should. That's kids,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Especially young boys, right? We should.
Right.
But what a great opportunity to change that, and at a great age too, because that age is when character is being developed.
Absolutely.
And so what a great age to capsulate that at, so that they learn it, and then it becomes part of their DNA growing up.
Absolutely. You know what I've found also, Michael, is that back to my naughty and nice stick, and using that as a spectrum, I found out that anger was obviously on the naughty side. With that, on that naughty side, there's vocabulary, there's jokes, there's a whole language of anger that doesn't exist anywhere else except on that side of the anger stick. And then on the other side of the stick, I put love. When you find out where you are at on that spectrum, whether you're closer to the naughty side or you're closer to the nice side, you have 3 decisions that you can make. You can stay put, you can go to the left, or you can go to the right. You can go toward the behavior. It's only at that point of realization, self-actualization, so to speak, that you can make a goal of where to go or stay the same. That's the only time you can do that. Even if you're closer to the love side, maybe you just want to be 1% better. I want to love 1% more today than I did the other day. Just 1% more each day, become more loving. And I love how the love languages, and Dr. Gary Chapman had indicated this in his book, how it reconciles to the life of Jesus Christ. That Jesus Christ, he touched. And the reason we know that touch was part of his ministry is that why else would he have to say to Mary, touch me not? Maybe Mary was going in for the hug. Maybe that was appropriate salutation at the time. And he had to say, touch me not. So we know that he touched. We know that he gave gifts. He gave the gifts of healing. He gave the gifts of the Spirit. He just gave a lot of gifts in that way. He spent time. Just sat with elders, sat with them, taught them, spent the time with them. We know he served, and we absolutely love his words.
Yep.
Everything about the love languages reconciles to the life of Jesus Christ. So if we really want to be more like him and bring that into our life, this is a very easy way to do it. Just focus on loving, focus on what's right about those people. And you think of back to the spectrum, if you think of the word sarcasm, some people just use it for humor. Some people just like it. Some people think it's part of their personality. But on the naughty and nice stick, where does sarcasm go? Well, the best way to think of that is what would be the opposite of sarcasm? Be more genuine or more authentic. Now you can see where sarcasm goes. It's really kind of on the naughty side of the stick. When you think genuine and authentic are on the nice side of the stick. You can do that with a lot of words, a lot of character traits. And if you've got a character trait in your life that you're wondering where is it on the stick, think of the opposite. Think of the antonym of that character trait. And then you'll be able to reconcile where is it on the stick and whether you need to let go of that naughty behavior and move toward the nice part of the stick.
Yep. And I love intentional, practical tools to use to change who we are. We have an option to do that. I like that you went from recognizing something that needed to be perceived different in your life, and you went after it. And that's, you're teaching what you learned now to others to give them that same opportunity. But I like the fact that we can also, we don't have to wait till someone's old to do it. We can use this practical thing with our grandkids, our children, and help them to learn something that we know will save them a lifetime of heartache if they can grasp it. We already live in a community of negativity. Mm-hmm. I was just at the store the other day, grocery store, and two people were just screaming at each other in the line over nothing. And it's like,
everybody's got short views.
Yeah. Is this what we've come to? And, if we're not careful, that can be us. Mm-hmm. That can be us. We have to make choosing. It means every day we choose to do this. And I love the fact that you roll the dice and say, all right, so today, see, you're starting your day off finding a way to love others. And you're saying, okay, so today I'm going to use my words to make sure that I show people I love them. Today it's service. Today I'm going to serve people. I'm going to serve others. Gets us outside of ourselves and into other. And if our world did a little bit more of that, there'd be a lot less screaming at the grocery store over insignificant things.
I think it'd take it down to zero, Michael.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, listen, Paul, thank you so much for being on here and for presenting this with us. We'll have the links in our description here for everyone so that they can go to do this. Is there any last thing you'd like to add that we haven't?
Michael, I think that it's really important, the consistency. This is like an investment. When you make an investment of love, you're sending it out without expectation that it'll ever come back, but you're trusting in the process that this is the way Jesus did it, and this is the way we should do it. Think about it in that same sense as far as anger goes. When you send anger out, you can expect to have it come back immediately. That investment has immediate returns. Is that what you want? Figure out what is it that you want. Just wait for the loving returns. Wait for that by sending the love out and stay in your lane. You have no control over having other people love you. Just send it out and expect the love to come back. It might come back quickly or it might come back after many days. But it's our responsibility. Keep sending it out. Keep brightening the day of other people. Turn that light on.
Goes to that old saying, you get what you give. And if we would give a little bit more, you're right. We're eventually going to see it return to us with that. Paul, thank you again so much for being on here with us today. I really have enjoyed it. To my listeners, go into descriptions, click on the link, check it out. And until next time, let's just keep being intentional. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Intentional Guy Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and got some real value out of it. Tell others what you learned and share the podcast if you think they would benefit from it too. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform, leave a review, and consider checking out our website, intentionalguy.org, to learn more about us and get in touch. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.